All right, welcome. And this will be a review for Social 30-2 by looking at some Part B questions released following 2011. And you can see I have two screens up. One screen on the left has the sources, the other screen on the right has the questions. No doubt when you are a student, you might have two different booklets, but I am using some technology that makes this rather clunky, but I'm going to try my best. So here we go. I hope that this will provide you some insight into how to unpack the questions, but also some insight into maybe some recurring themes and some recurring language that you'll see on Part B of the exam. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the questions and see what might somebody need to know in order to get it right. So the first question we see is an economic question. And I'd always read the question before I look at the source. Which of the following positions on the economic spectrum most strongly supports the politics and practices of collectivism? So before I look at the source, I might consider what am I anticipating to see. So collectivism, economic collectivism, I'm thinking of socialism, I'm thinking of communism, and I'm thinking of the left-right spectrum, and I'm going to think that collectivism economically is on the left. So then when I look at the source over here, I can see the position 1 is the furthest to the left. So in terms of the practices of collectivism, is that from a socialist state or did I see it in a communist state? So then I think back to my lessons and I'm like, okay, we saw collectivism in Stalin's USSR and that was communism. That's position 1. That's the case study that I really remember collectivism being part of, so then the answer must be A. So how do I find the answer to A? I know what the word collectivism means. So if you don't know the term collectivism, it needs to be in your glossary key terms, and I need to see its application on an economic spectrum. Position 1 is communism, where you'd see collectivism. Position 2 is more of a democratic socialist state, even because it's so close to the center, maybe modern liberalism. And position 3, these both 2 and 3 are really mixed economics, and position 4 is laissez-faire capitalism. From the time of the New Deal in the 30s through the 70s, the United States experienced a shift from position 1 to the left. That doesn't seem possible. Position 2 to the right. Well, if it's going towards capitalism, you'd be seeing less government involvement in the economy. And the whole point is that the New Deal was going to be more government involvement in the economy. 3 to the right or 4 to the left. So this is where the United States was during laissez-faire's, halcyon days, its golden age during the 1920s. And then because of the New Deal, up until Reaganomics in the early 1980s, the United States gets pulled to the left into the realm of mixed economics. So the answer that best captures that would be D. Number 3, with which of the following statements would the perspectives represented at all 4 positions on the spectrum most likely agree? So whether you're a capitalist or a mixed economist, whether you believe in little or some government intervention, or even someone that believes in more government intervention, centrally planned economics, what would you all agree on? Government must establish an economic system that promotes national prosperity. Well, they all want their nations to prosper, but they differ as to what amount of government regulation or government control is necessary to achieve that. So we could definitely see a pull to that one. So I might put a maybe next to that. Government must use economic policies to minimize income inequalities. Well, capitalists would not want to see government to try to respond to income inequalities. So that's not it. Government regulations that limit the freedoms of large-scale corporations must be eliminated. Capitalists would like that, but interventionists, socialists would not. Government must remove barriers to international trade. Again, capitalists agree with that, but maybe some that defend socialism or regulation to try to protect local businesses might not. The only one is A. So how did I get to A? I kind of looked at the logic behind each one, and I said, from a left-wing or right-wing economic perspective, would they both agree? And A is the only one. Historically, in Canadian federal elections, the political parties that have formed the federal election, or sorry, the federal government, have aligned most closely with. So, source one, that's a recall question. Source two is a recall question. You need to know some knowledge to get it right. Source four is also a recall question that you need to know that on that spectrum, where have we been? Have we been over here? Have we had communist governments? Not so much. So that rules out A and B. Now I'm down to C, which is a combination of position 2 and 3, or D, which is a combination of 3 and 4. So historically, going back, have we been moderate or have we been that laissez-faire? Now, the problem with the question maybe is that, if you go back to the 1920s and earlier, we were quite laissez-faire. But for the majority part, Canadians have been centralists, right? Quite moderate, and therefore the best answer would be C. In Canada, a person with right-wing ideological beliefs, so I might pause there and say, okay, what do right-wing people want? And the difficulty with the question there is, are we talking about economic right-wing? Are we talking about social, political right-wing? So I'm going to assume that this is economic, and then I take a glance at the source and it's looking at economic things. So I'm going to say, in Canada, a person with right-wing economic beliefs would most likely oppose which two of these reforms? So right-wing economic beliefs is small government, free market. So whichever two reforms is the opposite of that, which would create more government, which would regulate the market, those are the ones that they would oppose. So this is an idea of matching my understanding of right-wing ideological beliefs, small government, deregulation, privatization, free market, that's what they want, and trying to find the opposite of that. Nationalize fossil fuels. Nationalize something as public property, not private property. Nationalize is a left-wing thing. They don't want W. So now the answer is either A or B. It's either W and X or W and Z. So I don't even have to look at Y. Let's look at X. Reduce corporate taxes. Capitalists like the reduction of taxes. So the answer has to be W and Z, B. So how do you get the answer to that one? You need to know, similar to the earlier ones, what do people on the economic right wing value? They value small government. They value, therefore, things like private property, economic freedom. They value competition. They value deregulation, privatization, government laissez-faire, hands off. And we found two things that were doing the opposite of that. The answer was quite simple. Number 6. So number 6, there's a bit to read there. I'm a lazy guy. I want to know why I'm reading it. I don't want to read the question, then reread it. I want to kind of read it as few times as possible. I want to be very purposeful when I read it. So I'm going to read the question first. Point of view 1 suggests that citizens in democratic states, I might even consider the answers. I might try to, contrast them. A, lack the ability to choose the best political leaders. I'm going to pause and think, what might that look like? Citizens make bad choices in elections, and maybe we shouldn't have a democracy. So I would expect it's an elitist perspective, anti-democracy. B, want to be led by responsive, honest political leaders. How is A different than B? Contrasting them. A is saying citizens can't, they really don't have the ability to pick good people, good leaders, good politicians. B is saying we want to be led by good politicians. Both talking about good politicians, but from different angles. C, fail to appreciate the benefits associated from living in a democracy. D, believe that a democratic state is the best way to ensure public security. C and D, they're looking at the value of a democracy, but again, there's some subtle differences here. So I might now start matching. I'm going to take A and say, do we lack the ability to choose the best leaders? And if so, what sentences in point of view 1 would support that? We do not allow just anyone to fly a passenger jet, perform surgery, or design a bridge, because we know those tasks should be done by those qualified to do them. So why do we handle political decision making differently? Why do we allow the masses to be the ultimate political authority in a country? They are easily swayed by empty promises and slick campaigns. We lack the ability to choose the best leaders. We're swayed by promises and slick campaigns. So we lack the ability to differentiate between what is honest and what is not. We're picking the wrong candidates based upon popularity, not based upon substance. A far better process for leadership selection, lack the ability to choose, right, is a natural process in which the most able individual demonstrates ability, takes charge, and pilots the country. So point of view one suggests that we don't want a democracy. We want some kind of meritocracy, some kind of authoritarian state where the best lead us, like Plato and his philosopher kings. So, and they are arguing that we make bad choices because of empty promises and slick campaigns. Answer is A. The answer is not D, because it's talking about how democratic states don't work. The answer is not C, because it's not saying we fail to appreciate the benefits of a democracy. That the source is actually saying democracy doesn't have great benefits. And it's not really saying we want to be led by honest, responsive people. It's more like we choose to be led by people that give us empty promises. So the answer is definitely A. Number 7, which of the following examples would be most appropriate to support the ideas expressed in 2? In the 30s, Soviet leader Stalin employed secret police to eliminate people. So that's, I'm thinking of Stalin and his purges and all of that kind of stuff. Could that be appropriate evidence to support what's there? In the early 30s, the democratically elected government in Germany was unable to prevent a sudden and massive rise in unemployment rates. Similar, both from Chapter 5 of the 30-1 textbook that we use in 30-2, but at the same time, one's talking about purges, one's talking about economic instability creating this opportunity. C, Great Depression, 30s, FDR used massive government spending. D, 70s radical group, War Measures Act, hostages, 4 different things. So now I'm going to read it and see what am I matching it with. Number 7 is a reading comprehension question. If you take your time, you should be able to match them up, much like number 6 was. History has shown that when political power is in the hands of the elite citizens, they will base their decisions on protecting their power and ensuring that their needs are met. They're protecting their power. Stalin purges others to protect his power because they're a threat to his leadership. Pretty key connection. If we hire people to fix our car or repair our appliance, they are accountable for doing a good job. If they don't, they will be soon out of work. The same rules should apply to our political leaders. They have to be held accountable to the people. Otherwise, the people could suffer of incompetent leadership. After all, if the people who hire political leaders to make decisions for them. So, step 1, have to go and identify those ideas within the source, support the ideas expressed, right? So which of the following examples would be most appropriate to support the ideas expressed? So first thing we have to do is figure out what are the ideas expressed. And then it says, and I missed that the first time, in the first sentence, I didn't even have to read it all. History has shown that when political power is in the hands of the elite citizens, they will base their decisions on protecting their power. So I just need to match it with an example of, here's a dictatorship, the power's in the hands of just a few, and they make decisions to protect themselves. That's A. Which other one? The only other one that's a dictatorship is B, and it's not talking about Hitler protecting his power. It's talking about how Hitler rose to power. So it's got to be A. It's got to be A. And why did I go and read it all when it said only the first sentence? Man, I should have read that more clearly. But it says, which of the following supports the ideas expressed in the first sentence? You got to go and find the ideas expressed in the first sentence. History has shown political power in the hands of the elite. Those elite will protect themselves. A, Stalin's protecting themselves. It says right there, to eliminate persons perceived to be a threat to his leadership. Threat to his leadership will base their decisions on protecting their power. There's your connection. There's your answer. Number 8. Persons holding the different points of view presented would nevertheless agree. So similar to this other question up here where it had, regardless of position, what would they agree on? So regardless of whether you're an authoritarian or a favor of political liberal democracy, what would you agree? Poor political leadership puts citizens at risk. So whether you believe in a dictatorship or a democracy, sometimes there are dictators that are poor leaders. Sometimes there are democratically elected leaders that are poor at leading. And regardless of whether you like democracy or authoritarian states, you'd agree that a poor leader will hurt the citizens, puts them at risk. So it might be A. It really looks like A. Competition ensures processes ensure the selection of the best political leaders. Nope, the first one didn't want competition, right? It said competition leads to us being swayed by empty promises. Can't be that. The common person is not capable. Well, the first one said that, but the second one is arguing against authoritarian states and say, after all, it is the people who hire political leaders that have to make the decisions and hold the government accountable. So the second one wants accountability, wants democracy. The first one doesn't. So it can't be that one. The best political leaders are those who impose the fewest regulations. They don't talk about regulations. That's not the theme at all. So now we're going to move on to number 9. Which of the following rows identifies the ways in which a person who highly values equality and liberty would likely respond to the ideas expressed? Well, the first one was anti-liberty and the second one was pro-liberty. So the anti-liberty one they would disagree with, and the pro-liberty one they would agree with. So if I had to, I'd go back and say, okay, the one that wants authoritarianism, point of view 1, that's authoritarianism is a dictatorship. Dictatorship is the opposite of political liberty. So somebody who likes liberty would disagree with that. And then going back to 2, they want accountability. Accountability is a characteristic of a democratic state. Therefore, if you like liberty, you agree with that. The answer has to be D. Again, if you understand the concept of liberty attached to liberalism, which is the course, and you can apply it to 2 sources, you will not be challenged by that question at all. Number 10. Another big long quote. I want to know why I'm reading it. I'm going to read the question first. Which of the following beliefs about the structure of society is consistent with the ideas expressed or presented in the excerpt? Okay. Which of the following beliefs about the structure of society, I might highlight that if I had a booklet, structure of society, is consistent with the ideas expressed? It is necessary to use violence to overthrow a government that becomes unpopular. Okay, I'm going to think back and think, what does that look like? People are best able to determine for themselves which individuals should be trusted. A is violent revolution when necessary. B is democracy. B is pro-democracy, right? C is the benefit of society that the authority to rule be a hereditary position. C is pro-monarchy. D, civilization has corrupted society and therefore a strong authoritarian state. So D is a dictatorship, C is a monarchy, B is a democracy, and A is let's have a revolution. I don't want to be lazy here, but I look at it's from the U.S. Declaration of Independence. The United States is a democracy. The answer is going to be B, right? Like, come on. But you can read through the source. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the people. Government gets their consent from the people. That's a democracy. The answer's got to be B. In context, the first sentence of the excerpt suggests that rights and freedoms must be protected by a collective group, can be limited during times of domestic crisis, are fundamental, are granted to those who hold an elite. Again, if it's a democracy and not a plutocracy or an oligarchy, then it's not going to be D. D is saying some get the rights, but not all. If it's a democracy, then going back, are rights fundamental in a democracy? That rights and freedoms are fundamental elements that individuals possess. I'm going to go back and look and say, is there evidence that that's the answer? Because that's what I would associate with a democracy. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Rights and freedoms, right? They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. rights and freedoms, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are fundamental. These are fundamental that everyone has them, that they're unalienable. Another way to say unalienable is that it's fundamental, that these should not be taken away. So that's the poll to see. Number 12, which of the following philosophers would be least likely to support the ideas? Cast of characters is always a good idea when you're studying a course. Locke likes democracy. Hobbes does not. Mill likes democracy. And Rousseau likes direct democracy. So you have a 3-1 split in your cast of characters. 3 of those are in favor of political liberty. 1 of them is in favor of political collectivism, authoritarianism. Who would be least likely to like a democracy? Somebody that likes authoritarianism, Hobbes. Pretty straightforward. If you didn't know it, then you didn't learn your cast of characters. Go back and review your key characters of the course. Number 13. The writer or source once suggests that people differ in the degree to which they share their wealth, demonstrate characteristics associated with self-reliance, consume the goods and services produced in the marketplace, obey the laws of the country when conducting business transactions. Share their wealth and demonstrate characteristics associated with self-reliance. Again, pause, take a look, and think about what those might look like. Disapprove because, consume the goods and services produced in the marketplace, obey the laws. So if you can't have 4 of them in your mind at the same time, because I'm struggling a little bit here, you might have to do it one for one and say, am I seeing any clues in the source, any cues on the page that it's talking about share their wealth or demonstrate self-reliance? Taxation system based on the theory of taking from the rich to give to the poor results in frustration and stagnation. I mean, sharing wealth and taxation goes together, but I'm not ready to jump to A yet. It penalizes the enterprising, self-reliance, the efficient, self-reliance, the vigorous, and the thrifty, without in the long term benefiting those who lack these self-reliant qualities. That second sentence is screaming, pick B. High taxes or high rates of taxation, which go beyond the need for government's general support and maintenance of public services, reduce labor's incentive to work. Incentive to work? Self-reliance. So what I'm doing is a reading comp, and I'm seeing that term self-reliance that's in the stem for B, or the answer for B, and I'm connecting that word self-reliance to the language in the source, and there is a connection. B is my answer. A supporter of classic liberal ideas of Adam Smith. Okay. So capitalist, an individualist, free market, would most likely respond to the point of view. So this point of view, the fallacies of socialism, right there in the title, we know that a fallacy is a false truth, so it's anti-socialism. So a capitalist is going to like it, right? So they're going to approve because the writer identifies the negative consequences of high rates of taxation, maybe. Approval because the writer recognizes the need for government regulation. Capitalists don't want the government to regulate. Capitalists wouldn't say, oh, I approve because government's getting bigger. Capitalists want government to get smaller. A is the only one that's logical. A is your answer. Please. All right. The central message of source 2. So we've got this cartoon. And it says false front from the fallacies of socialism still. So, it's a fallacy, a false truth. We're going to zoom in a little bit here. So we've got socialism, step inside. We've got controls and high taxes. We don't want high taxes. It's inefficient. I can't say for sure what that says. It almost looks like it could be a vulgarity. I don't think it would be, though. Owned and operated by the government. So it's owned and operated by the government. It looks great from the road, but behind it, it's kind of a building that's not as nice. It's kind of like in Hollywood where they might have those buildings that are only look good from the camera angle, but if you look beyond the camera, there isn't much substance there, and what there is actually there's high taxes, controls, and inefficiency. So the central message of source 2 is that the socialist states project an image of themselves that differs from reality. I mean, please, right? The front, the thing that is being shown from the street, is different than the reality behind. Yep. Yep. Are successful at producing consumer goods? Well, then why is it inefficient? Right? So can't be B. Are successful at eliminating poverty? That guy looks pretty poor on the street. Claim to protect the rights of workers. It's not really talking about that. A is my answer, and it's screaming A. With which row identifies the point of view expressed by each source? Well, they're both from the fallacies, right? So there's that. Critical of collective economic systems. This one's certainly critical, right? That one's certainly critical. And this one also saying that we need more self-reliance, right? That the consequence of taking away self-reliance, the consequence of high taxes is the less new enterprises, lower productivity. So they're both speaking against collective economic systems like socialism. So the answer's got to be A. All right. We've got lots of these reforms listed by Robert Owen. The reforms listed in the list would be most accurately considered to be a socialist because Owen's a socialist. I mean, Owen's in your cast of characters. Owen's not a fascist. He's not a communist. He's certainly not a capitalist. He owns capital. He owns the factory. But those ideas of regulating, of putting on legislation that's going to limit things, capitalists wouldn't agree with that. So these are more of an interventionist, more of a left-wing attitude, but not all the way to communism where the workers need to unite and overthrow the owner of the factory. Heck, Owen's the owner of the factory. He doesn't want his workers to take his factory, but he is definitely embracing some economic collectivism and regulation that a socialist would agree with. Wow. A supporter of Adam Smith would view Reform 3, maximum of 12 hours working day. Well, if I believe in laissez-faire, I don't want any limits to be put on my working day. You know, maybe I need to work 15 hours to make more money. Maybe I want to work more than 12 hours. So it's going to be disapproval because it's going to limit the potential maximum profits. Many days that I work more than 12 hours as a teacher. I don't get paid by the hour, too bad. But, you know, why put a limit on how many hours you can make from a capitalist perspective? You're just limiting profit. So it's got to be A. Which of the following reforms would be consistent with those listed? All of these socialist interventions. The establishment of a minimum wage. Absolutely. That would be consistent. Pay deductions? No, these are helping the workers. So that wouldn't work. The elimination of Sunday? That doesn't help the workers. Introduce a government-imposed factory production targets. Again, yes, that's bigger government, but it's missing the point. And the point of these reforms is it's helping the people, the workers. The only one that helps the workers is A. It's got to be A. Number 20. The information describes the importance of labor unions, resource distribution, invisible hand, centrally planned economy. So there's some key terms there, but now we're going to apply to a writing. So by the end of the course, you should be able to differentiate between a mixed economy, a free market, a centrally planned, and a socialist economy. By the end of the course, you need to know what an invisible hand is or what a labor union is. If consumers do not demand a product, it will not be sold. Answer is the invisible hand, right? It's the idea of what decides the three basic economic questions: what's produced, how to produce it, who to allocate it to, and it should be supply and demand. That right there, I know it's talking about the invisible hand. If consumers do not demand a product, it will not be sold unless its price is very low to attract buyers. The reality forces producers to make something that consumers want, invisible hand, so that they can really receive little or no profit. Yeah, it's definitely the invisible hand. Now, some economic reforms. Which of the following beliefs is ideologically consistent with the beliefs listed in the source? Government should not intervene. Supply of goods and services should be focused by supply and demand, much like the last question. Individual self-reliance. Capitalism, free market, right wing, right? So which of the following beliefs is capitalist, is right wing? Workers should be required to form trade unions? No, no, no. That takes away the freedom to choose whether or not you're in a trade union. Trade unions, through collective bargaining, can somewhat pervert the the wages that they can demand. So capitalists don't like that. Non-renewable resource industries should be state-owned. State-owned doesn't go with capitalism. High taxes should be placed. Nope. Individuals should have the freedom to earn. Yep. It's a matching game. And there it is. You're matching up values of capitalism with policies of government. Again and again, in the economic questions, you have questions like this. There's very few concepts in the economic unit. If you understand the left-right economic spectrum and can apply to scenarios, you're going to do well. Which of the following eras in history is most closely associated with capitalism? Well, it's not the Soviet Union. That's communism. The New Deal is modern liberalism. Mercantilism is what capitalism was a antithesis of. When did we see capitalism? During the era of the Industrial Revolution. B. That's kind of a recall question, isn't it? There's nothing on the page that's going to help you with that. Number 23. Which of the following observations regarding the statements is true? Statement 1, the British government of the early 19th century contributed to the development of the Industrial Revolution by adopting policies that reflected Adam Smith. Yes, they did. Human suffering created by the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century prompted Karl Marx to propose communism. Yes, he did. Both are true. So again, that's casting characters, Marx and Smith, and some recall of what they wanted and how they were applied. 24 to 28, more economic questions. Awesome. And now we get to differentiate between characters of a right-wing free market, a centralist mixed, or a left-wing command economy, or maybe it's in all of them. Super easy. Supporters of the system argue that because virtually the entire economy is under the direct control of the government, sounds like command, that makes a government agency that makes major government decisions, sets prices, the country's resources are used efficiency. So which one has virtually the entire economy? That's command. Free market, very little government control. Command, almost entirely. So 24 has to be C. Supporters of this system argue that because individuals are self-reliant, free market. Supporters of this system argue that it is the best way to ensure the government's economy continues to grow, resources will be efficiently utilized. There's nothing there that pinpoints that to how much government there is. It just says that we're going to try to have prosperity and everything's efficient. That's going to be all. Supporters of this system argue that through regulation of private businesses, public ownership of some important areas of the economy are progressive. So it's some control, right? Social welfare system, some control. Let's eliminate, we have progressive taxation to narrow but not eliminate income gaps. We're still going to have income gaps. We're going to narrow them. This is the mix in the middle then. Supporters of this system argue that by encouraging competition, free market, among privately owned businesses and having government take a minimum role, free market. Those are easy ones. All right. Yeah, let's do number 29. We'll do some political ones too. I was going to break this up into an economic political division. I don't know. Should I continue with just economic ones so you can review this for an economic test, or should I continue with the political ones? Maybe I'll continue with the economic ones because there's not many of those, and we don't want to make this video too long. So let's skim ahead to 55. That's the next economic one. There's a lot of politics, a lot of political questions. So we'll go ahead to 55. Okay, we have two options, so let's take a vote. Either we cut back on perks and use the revenue to improve our product, or lay off a bunch of people below us. So obviously that's a critique of capitalism, right? They're making these guys look to be greedy. The cartoonist is critical of people who place individual gain, give ourselves a bonus, ahead of collective interest. Let's improve the product. So there's a correlation behind the answer, which is A, with what is said on the page. So that shouldn't be hard to find. 56. How would a supporter of free market economics respond to a cartoon that is criticizing free market economics? They're going to disapprove of it because the cartoonist portrays corporate leaders as greedy because they want a bonus. A. The use of the term democracy, corporate democracy, don't often see those things together, is ironic because those making a decision are not given enough choices. Maybe, yeah. It's this or that. Corporate executives usually hold their position for life. Not necessarily. Most corporations can be compared with democratic societies. A corporate elite is making a decision that will affect all. So in a democracy, it's supposed to be like everyone gets input. Here, there's what, 6? Almost looks like 2 people in this one picture. But yeah, I can see 6 chairs. So it's 6 people making a decision for others. So I'm going to go with D for that one. Number 61 is also an economic question. So let's skip ahead to that. 61 trends indicated in the graph. So what are the trends? You'll have to go and look at that. Suggest that rising interest rates charged on bank loans are going to do something. So interest rates charged on bank loans. That's the one with the little triangle. So the little triangle goes up here, and then goes up here. So when it goes up, this unemployment rate seems to go up. When it goes up here, the unemployment rate seems to go up. So trends indicated in the graph, raising interest rates seem to create more unemployment. Raising rates of both inflation and unemployment. Oh, did inflation go up? Inflation is the dot. So inflation goes down here when that goes up. Inflation goes up here. So it goes up here. Inflation goes down. Inflation tends to go down, though. Falling rates of both inflation and unemployment. No. A falling inflation rate, we saw that, and a rising unemployment rate. It's got to be C. So if you take the time to look at the chart and see the correlation, should be able to see it. I just want to make sure. A raising inflation rate and a falling unemployment rate. Trends that rising interest rates. Interest rates go up here. Unemployment goes up. Interest rates go up here. Unemployment goes up. While unemployment goes up, inflation goes down. Yeah. So I think I have the answer there as C. It's interesting, though, because the back of the book says D. So a rising inflation rate and a falling unemployment rate. Trends indicated in the graph show that the rising interest rates charged on bank loans are related to interest rates going up, or inflation rates going up, and unemployment going down. Interest rates charged on bank loans. Interest rates on bank loans go high. Unemployment goes up. Interest rates on bank loans go up. Unemployment goes up. Interest rates on bank loans go up. Inflation rate goes down. I don't know. I see it as C. The back of the book says D. I'm going to ask other people, see why I'm wrong on that one. Maybe I'm reading it backwards. Which of the following generalizations is supported by information in the graph? Number 62. A country's economy will experience economic fluctuations. Well, we're seeing fluctuations. Unemployment goes up and goes down. Inflation goes up, goes down. Government can encourage international trade. Do you see any reference to international trade there? A country's economy will benefit from a healthy, well-educated workforce. Where in the source does it talk about education? Government regulations may be necessary to ensure that there's competition. We have no indicator in that source that there is or is not competition. So for that one, I'm confident it's A. For that one, I am confident. Let's go to 71, 72, and 73 to finish the economic side of this. So 71. 72 and 73. Maybe in the next video I'll try to figure out what went wrong with... So, 71, 72, 73 have no sources. So I'm going to just minimize that for now. 71, 72, and 73. 71. In a free market economy, consumers can expect prices to be low. So in a capitalist economy where there's no regulation of prices, prices will be low when nobody wants to buy this stuff. So maybe their supply is high or demand is low. So product is overproduced. So lots of supply, prices will be low. Makes sense. Inflation rate exceeds the rate of wage increase. Inflation rate exceeds the rate of wages. So, I mean, there's a lot of complication there. A is a lot more straightforward. Inflation rate just means prices are going up. So consumers can expect prices to be low when inflation prices are going up. That doesn't make sense. We'll leave it at that. Product is manufactured by only one or two companies. If I have a monopoly, if I'm one or two companies that is creating a product, I'm charging a lot for it because I want profit. Can't be C. Resources needed to manufacture the product are scarce. Prices would go up then. It's got to be product is overproduced. We got a lot of product here. We're going to give you a good price on it. So that's number 71. 72 and 73 are also economic. In his books Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto, if you haven't read it, just say, oh, okay. Karl Marx attempted to do what? What did he attempt to do? Indicate how and why a communist system would be established? I mean, seems like it. Outline a plan for a peaceful transition. Well, we know he said it was going to be violent, so it's not that. Design and plan the economic strategy for the new Bolshevik state. Bolshevik state is the 20th century. He writes these books in the 19th century. Unless he time traveled, that's not the answer. Prove that society is best served when individuals seek to satisfy personal needs. D is pro-capitalist, he's pro-communist. Then the answer has to be A. And then the final question, and you can stop listening to me because you're tired of hearing this voice. The emergence of trade unions, the expansion of voting rights, and the introduction of universal public education in industrialized countries. Okay. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, increased the political power and influence of. So unions, voting rights, public education. I don't see anything there about religion. Get rid of that. I don't see anything there about, we really need our military. Get rid of that. Now, if unions have rights, then why would it be the owners of the factories? And when we expand the rights of voting, we expand it from just the wealthy to all men and then all women, right? So as we expand it, it's more and more the workers getting rights. So it's going to be B. And I'm going to end it there. And hopefully this recorded and you'll see it on YouTube. If it didn't record, I guess I'm going to be unhappy because I don't want to do that again.